Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Welcome to Boulder, Colorado and Rowdy Mermaid Kombucha. You're looking out at the flat irons. Do you see them?
I do. Beautiful.
And all the boom cranes. That's
yeah.
That's the Google office. That's right across the street from us. So I'm going to walk you past our delivery truck and office people over to our employee locker room in order to have this conversation, because we have our VP of sales is in the conference room. I guess this will be good. We'll see how this goes.
All right. Let's just roll into it.
Yeah.
I'll do the little intro here. Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by foundersuite.com. Today I have Jamba Dunn of Rowdy Mermaid Kombucha coming to us from Boulder. We just got the scenic tour of the Flatirons. How's it going?
It's going good. As you can tell, it's a little everything all at once over here. But it's going very well. It's a beautiful day in Boulder. It's been snowing, and now suddenly it's 75 degrees, and we're all very happy here.
I grew up in Boulder all the way through high school, so I know the crazy weather patterns there. It's 75 one day and 31 the next, right? Like
sometimes in the same day. Yeah, it was 85 degrees, snowed the next day. Then it was super foggy, and now it's absolutely no snow can be found anywhere, and 75 degrees. Brilliant. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Are you from Boulder? Where'd you come from?
I came from the Bay Area, California. I started in SoCal, but spent a lot of my life in the Bay Area. And then we moved here in 2003.
Cool. Yeah. Great town. Lots of activity going there too. When's that Google campus going to be done?
Oh, the first part of it was already done, but now they've been just constantly expanding it. So I don't know if all of it is ever going to be fully finished, because they're closing in on finishing the last building, and now they're building apartments across the street. And so our beautiful view of the Flatirons is soon going to turn into a view of the backside of their apartment building. But, it'll probably change. They're already morphing this town around Google a lot, so it'll be ongoing for years.
Yeah. How many people are they expected to totally, I mean, I guess it could be many, but what's the number of employees they're going to have there?
I don't know the numbers. Firsthand, somebody told me a couple of thousand a couple of years ago. But as we know, with the Amazon move to the Boulder area, it's not just an office. They have multiple offices everywhere. And so I think the same thing will happen there. Twitter is the same thing. We've got one main office, but then they've got satellite offices. The Amazon office, we just discovered yesterday, because we're going on tap in one of their offices. Specifically, that's a robotics office downtown Boulder. But then we know that they've got, like I said, other campuses all over.
Cool. Congrats. How'd you win that deal? Was it a kombucha? Well, we haven't even got to what you do. So let's start with that before we get into the weeds. So tell us, what is Rowdy Mermaid Kombucha?
Sure. Rowdy Mermaid Kombucha, as you can tell by the name, is a kombucha company. We're based here in Boulder, started in 2013, and we were the first functional or function-forward plant-infused kombucha company. We launched the first decaffeinated and non-alcoholic kombucha in our space.
What does functional kombucha mean?
So a lot of kombuchas simply rely on the bacteria and probiotics that are in there as the quote-unquote functional property, meaning that it offers something to your body when you drink it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a passive drink. And functional's got a wide range of different meanings. But for us, we like the probiotics, the living raw probiotics, but we didn't think that was the full story about what kombucha could be used for. And a lot of the research that I did on the early kombucha beverages in Eastern Europe really showed that they were using mushrooms and barks and different types of ingredients that resulted in the healthful benefits of the kombucha they were brewing. So when I started this company, we decided to really go back to herbs and roots and botanicals and look at how we could build recipes for different properties from the ground up. For instance, we've got a calming brew that has all flowers in it and it's decaffeinated, and we have a tonic that is particularly tonifying and cooling that's made from strawberry, hibiscus, chicory, dandelion root. And so all of our products are built from what we're trying to achieve with that particular flavor versus the kombucha industry, which is just kombucha in 30 flavors or more.
Got it. And I think kombucha is pretty well known by now, but maybe for anyone who's still new to it, maybe just like, where did define kombucha just very briefly? And it seems to have just come out of nowhere in a couple years. Like, where did it all come from so quickly, and why maybe?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So kombucha's got a couple 1,000-year history from China. It's believed that the first brews came from ancient China. And, ferments like this, though, have been a part of a lot of different cultures. You can relate kombucha back to some of the early vinegar productions as well in different areas of the Middle East and southeastern Europe. But the reason it became so popular is that there were a lot of people brewing kombucha at home forever. I've heard from people in Boulder who know these people, that people like John Denver had his macrobiotic chef always traveling with him throughout the 60s and 70s with kombucha on board and making sure that he got his kombucha. So it was like a home remedy, tonifying beverage. But it was GT who started the first kombucha company, I believe, about 22 years ago, and that's GT's and Synergy Kombucha. And by launching it as a CPG product, a consumer packaged good, he helped bring it into the marketplace, and it took quite a while for it to catch on. And it took quite a while for other companies to look at what he was doing and decide to make that leap and to try it themselves. There were a lot of people in the industry who were, as I mentioned, making it at home themselves and sharing kombucha with friends and sharing the SCOBY, or what grows inside of kombucha that you can use to make new batches, almost like sourdough starter. And they were sharing these widely in small communities. And some of those people in the early days got on board with trying to start a CPG company around it. So but at its base, kombucha is fermented tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you add tea to sugar and water, and you add yeast and bacteria, and the yeast convert the sugar into ethanol, and the bacterial strains convert the ethanol into acids. And so what you're left with is an effervescent, acidic beverage that's really good for tonifying the body and has lots of different benefits aside from just having living probiotics in it.
Very interesting. Yeah. And the main, or, kind of the more common benefits are digestion and what else? I mean, that's how I think of it, but I don't know it very well. So
Yeah. I mean, digestion is one of the main benefits of kombucha. You definitely notice a change to your digestive tract once you get on a regular basis of drinking kombucha on a daily basis. And as I mentioned, it's a great tonifying agent. It instead of making a body acidic, it makes it more basic. And so you know that there's all those waters out there now that are trying to do the same thing, where they advertise the pH of the water. So even though kombucha is acidic, it helps the body to become more basic, and we associate that with the ability to stave off disease and infection, and even in some specific cases, forms of cancer, or it can slow the growth of mass size of certain cancer cells. But it's those claims have been verified in different ways in different literature, but it's hard to make an overall claim about kombucha. We're still learning every day. A lot of the industry has just grown up in, really the last 7 to 10 years.
Yeah. Is it, I see a lot of firms or a lot of products on the shelf, and they look like they're mostly small entrepreneurial endeavors. Is any of the big guys got into this or started acquiring firms yet, or what's the market?
Oh yeah. That's the fun part about this industry right now, is that people got into it originally to bring kombucha to as many people as possible. And, we also got into it in order to bring plant medicine to as many people as we could. And in the last couple of years, we have Coors, who bought out Clearly Kombucha just very recently. We had Pepsi Cola, who acquired Kavita a couple of years ago. We have Coca-Cola, who invested into Health Aid Kombucha. We've got Coca-Cola, who purchased Mojo Kombucha just a couple of months ago in Australia. InBev, I believe it is, who purchased Brew Bucha on the East Coast, an alcoholic kombucha company. And so, there's a lot of big money that's come into the space because we're growing more rapidly than beer is growing. We're one of the fastest growing categories of food and beverage in the world right now. And there's no slowing down in sight, because the kombucha industry has really only grown up in the natural channel, Whole Foods, your local health food store, and it's only just in the last 2 years spread out into the conventional space. And so we're seeing that a lot of people are starting to, in the conventional space, starting to jump on board with kombucha.
Yeah. No, okay. So the big guys are already definitely making some moves there. Is GT Synergy still independent, or did someone snap them up?
They're
them a lot.
Yeah, no, they're still independent. It's still run by GT, who we just saw a couple weeks ago at KombuchaCon. And he's now got, I want to say 6 or 7 different products. So he's got regular kombucha and alcoholic kombucha and teas and waters and, all kinds of things, yogurt. And so they're growing massively. There was a rumor last year that InBev was trying to perhaps make a play for purchasing his company, but he said recently it's no dice. So we'll see what happens, though.
Interesting. Fast. Okay, I always love to just hear the sort of. And so, how did you get into this? You were brewing it in your bathtub, or no? What were you doing? How'd you get into this space?
It's an interesting question. I was making a lot of beer at home, and my daughter basically came to me, and she's only 3, and she asked, basically, why are you spending all of your time, in the garage making this thing that I can't have?
Right.
And she said, could you make something for me? And I instantly felt like a failure as a parent, and realized, I've been focusing on all the wrong things. And so I decided, well, kombucha's got to be easy. I'll just make her some kombucha. I had several conversations with people in the kombucha industry several years prior, and I'd always thought that making a kombucha tap room sounded like fun, but the reality was I didn't really know what kombucha was, and so the concept was pretty far-flung. So here I was trying to make a product for my daughter, and realizing that, wow, this is a rabbit hole of complexity. It just never ends, because you've got all kinds of things going on in there. The bacterial strains that can change their DNA, and overnight to be able to live in this new environment that's been created, whether more acid or alcohol. And so it's always transforming. And so I personally loved the challenge and went down the rabbit hole of trying to make kombucha for my daughter, and then instantly realized, well, wait a second. What I'm noticing is that I'm using water from the city, and so there's I could filter some things out, but I can't filter out fluoride. And so how am I going to get the fluoride out? And it's making alcohol, and how am I going to make it safe? And it's making a bunch of acids, some of which we know about and some of which we don't. And what's acceptable to drink and what's unacceptable. And so I started racking up all these questions, and eventually hired a microbiologist, or I guess at this point I should say, got in touch with the microbiologist, and we started talking on a regular basis about how to solve some of these issues. And then early on, I solved alcohol problems and different things like that. And right around that time, my daughter came to me and asked if there's any way I could make her a kombucha using her favorite flowers. And she had brought me a whole bunch of flowers from the garden that she liked. And I said, absolutely, sweetie. And then I went to the scientist I was working with, and he said, absolutely not. You can't make a decaffeinated kombucha. And so then we set our goal. Obstacles are opportunities. Let's make a decaffeinated kombucha using flowers from the garden. Why not? And so the information gathering that happened during that time was pretty big. I went around and talked to as many CEOs as I could of other kombucha companies. I talked with scientists. We read all the books, everything, and ended up ultimately finding our own way towards making the first decaffeinated kombucha and solving the alcohol problem that plagues the industry, and really getting what would eventually become a company set up. But back then I was working full time as the American English content author and a product designer with Rosetta Stone, and building language learning games for children. And on the side, I had hundreds of gallons of kombucha brewing in multiple steel tanks, and my whole house had been converted from a home into a laboratory. And and it was all because I was just trying to make the 8 ounces my daughter drank every day. And so I think it was my wife who said, this is maybe a little over the top. Maybe you should think about getting a warehouse and really trying to move forward with the tap room idea, and setting up one of the first tap rooms in the world for kombucha. And so that's what we did here in Boulder.
Oh, you have a tap room? Where's the tap room?
Right now, it's in Boulder. We moved it into another business called the Rayback Collective.
Okay.
And the Rayback Collective is a food truck court of sorts with a stationary bar on the inside, and you can go outside and play horseshoes and things. And so we've got our tasting room in there, but we had our own standalone tasting room in Boulder, and then at 49th and Pearl. And so I think we were the 5th one in the world by the time we finally got set up. And it was because of the tap room that Whole Foods executives came in to have lunch there. And eventually they said to me, listen, this is amazing. Let's get this on the shelf at Whole Foods. And then that started the whole new adventure. Where do you buy a bottle? Where do you get a cap? Where do you get a box? And some of those questions we're still asking ourselves, even though we're in 17 states.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing, and it's just been a rocket ship to hold on to ever since then.
Yeah, it's super. That's super exciting. Is Boulder a hotbed? I remember Boulder had like White Wave and a lot of interesting pioneers of natural foods. I mean, this is back when I was there a long time ago. Is it a hotbed of kombucha activity or what?
Yeah. So let's see. When we first moved in, so we had the first tap room in Boulder, and I know Celestial Seasonings was brewing at that time in Boulder, and they had just acquired a company from the farmers market. And we know that there was another company at the farmers market that was selling a little bit. And we know that there were a lot of people drinking kombucha in Boulder already, GTs and Kavita and other brands that were out back then. But the strong wave of companies hadn't quite hit yet. I think we probably have 5 or 6 different companies in Boulder and more than a dozen in Denver right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's still, Boulder is the hotbed of CPG, consumer packaged goods. So we used to have Boulder brands here. We still have Naturally Boulder, which is this event that people come from all over the world to. We have lots and lots of startups are based here, wild brands. And I mean, we could just go down the street. In fact, in our little row where we are manufacturing right now, we've got several other brands just a couple doors down, not kombucha, but food brands. So it's a great place because I can get in my car and drive for 1 minute and be at the office at Justin's Nut Butter and sit down with Justin and talk with him about business issues that we're having. Well, or I could reach out to friends. The local Whole Foods here, which is right across the street from our office in Google, you could just stand there and if you know people in the industry, you could literally just stand in the produce area, and then within minutes you'll start seeing people. Oh, there's the CEO of Rolling Greens. I need to talk with him, and so it's kind of a funny atmosphere. It's probably much like the Silicon Valley is for computers and software. Boulder is for the food world.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Is Alfalfa still there, or are they gone?
Alfalfa is still here. Yep.
That was great. Used to go there during lunch at Boulder High. I'd walk up there and good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are great. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about raising money. So how much have you guys raised, and how do you raise money for a kombucha company?
It's a good question. So we've always tried to not raise money, and we've tried to bankroll and extend the business as far as it can possibly go to not have to pull in capital, simply because we want to keep the value in the company, and we want to keep as many hands out of the company as possible. To date, we've raised just a little bit over $3.5 million. Our last round was $3.5 million with a PE firm from the East Coast, KarpReilly, leading the fund, and some local investors jumping on board. I'd mentioned Justin from Justin's Nut Butter, who came on board, and Brendan Synnott, who is the co-founder of Bare Naked and Siggy's and several other brands. He jumped on board, and a few other people in there.
Cool.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing is, in 2014, I had people walking up asking if they could just hand me money, because I think other people understood that this category was blowing up like wildfire, and they wanted to have a way to get in. But not a lot of kombucha companies are very public facing, or weren't at that time. And no one was setting up companies, or at least that we were aware of at the time, for to be a production facility. More people were setting it up just to be able to fulfill a farmer's market opportunity, or to, maybe make it for friends or sell it on Etsy and other types of things. But we were inspired by local beer and wanted to set up a facility that could really produce a good amount of product. And so that made an opportunity. It looked like an opportunity, but we had no idea what we were doing in 2014.
Yeah.
And so some of the companies that approached us for information about the company basically got paragraphs on one sheet of paper, and how we've grown. So, cut forward to 2018, 2019, the world of kombucha was already exploding. We already had Coke and Pepsi and InBev and other Heineken and other people in the industry. And the interesting thing that happened was investors went from feeling like kombucha is great, we got to jump on board early, to suddenly, well, Coke and Pepsi are in, so that's it. There's no other investments that could be made, and so it became a little bit of a struggle to try to get people on board, because they felt like there were going to be no big sales in the kombucha world. If big beverage, big soda couldn't take it on, then forget about it. But we've definitely seen that there were lots of different players in the world of consumer packaged goods who hadn't jumped in with kombucha just yet, and were very interested in maybe making a move. And some of those multi-billion-dollar companies, weren't even on the radar of some of the angels and PE firms we were speaking with, who thought it was over. We thought we were going to make certain deals with companies, investment firms that were outside of the United States who had a vested interest in bringing it to their country. And that was a direction we were thinking of going, until we were introduced to KarpReilly. And we know that they have a long history of being in the beverage world with brands like Koya and Kavita, and they understand the beverage category, and they understand kombucha, and they took Kavita from where it was to the sale with Pepsi, and they understood the whole life cycle, and they were more than willing to jump in and help us. So and we feel very, very fortunate to have such great partners.
How did you identify them, or are there a lot of investors? I mean, some of them were approaching you, it sounds like, but did you build a database or list of investors that are playing the space, or just CPG type of investors? Where'd you start?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we started with simply letting the press know, in a couple of small PR moves that we had, that we were looking to get investment. And then we went around to all of the different firms in Boulder, which are many, and we began speaking with all of them. And we found that that Boulder was, even though we know a lot of the great firms around here that invest in other companies, they were pretty hands off, and they wanted a sure win. And it seemed like they wanted to know that it was going to win 100% and that they were going to flip it by this date. And it seemed like a different approach for us. So we had those conversations going. The people started biting on the PR that we put out and coming to us. And in those interviews, we would ask them about other companies that they have worked with. And so that we started getting names and cold calling. Then we started reaching out to stores, Alfalfa's, for instance. The owners of Alfalfa's, were particularly interested in potentially investing. The Whole Foods approached us about investing into us early on. And then they told us about other investors in California, and it began growing fairly rapidly. And then once we had a CFO on board with knowledge of yet more investment companies, and our legal team who were telling us about major beer investors or companies on the East Coast, it suddenly became this, every single day we were having calls with 1 to 4 different investment companies. And they were always dropping names of other companies. And while we were going through this, it was anything but frustrating that we weren't raising money in a timely fashion as a sort of grasswork, wait, is that the right word? A grassroots campaign to build our community. And so the calls became partially, here's what we're doing, here's the math, this is where we're going to, and a little bit more into, we really want to get to know you guys better, and who else is on your team that we should talk to, and what companies have you invested into that would be great for us to know, just as, you know, potential partners down the road. And so that's the way we approached it.
Yeah, that's good. The PR angle, that's a little bit unique. You know, what were these PR pieces that were pulling in some leads? I mean, were they just...
Yeah, I'm laughing right now because it's actually illegal, and we didn't really know it at the time, or did we? We had some front page news on the local newspapers here. We had some opportunities to have pretty significant news stories in various newspapers and periodicals across the United States while we were being interviewed about the alcohol issues in kombucha, or the rise of kombucha in kegs, or the rise of kombucha tap rooms when we were in Outside Magazine and got to talk about that. And so some of these opportunities we started dropping at the end of the article. And by the way, we're raising money right now if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not, we had people showing up the next day with the paper. Hey, read about you guys in the paper. What are you looking for? I've got money. I can help you get there. And then that those people showing up really helped us to mature the rest of the business, because we realized fairly quickly I couldn't be the bookkeeper anymore. I couldn't be the CFO anymore. I couldn't be all of these different roles. So we started investing our money into different people in the community who could help fulfill those different roles, to go back through the business and build the books from the ground up, and build all the models and the projections that were necessary. And year after year after year, those just became much more robust. And that made us much more ready to engage with bigger firms.
Makes sense. How many investors do you think you talked to overall? I always ask about sort of the size and shape of your funnel. Ended up with KarpReilly at the bottom, but yeah.
I would say it was probably around 40 different investors. 40 different PE firms, and then probably about another 15 to, well, no, let me think about this. Probably about another 20 to 30 angels. And some of those angels had family members who weren't angels, but wanted to get in. And then there were some investment groups where we got to pitch to multiple investors at once. There are clubs, for instance. Each city has different investment clubs. And some of those typically only invest in software. And we were trying to get them over to the food and consumer packaged good industry.
What's the name of an investment club? Are you talking like an angel group or something else?
Yeah, angel groups. Yeah, typically angel groups. Yeah. So
is there one for CPG companies? Is there a specific like angel group for CPG or food that people should be aware of?
So we never found one specifically for food. As I mentioned, we were just going to software, and we were going to groups that were focused on different areas, and those were fascinating conversations as well, I have to say. So no, I can't drop any names of one specific group that's going to fit this industry. The other thing that we did was that we're always getting as many speaking opportunities as possible at the universities, giving lectures for microbiology departments, whatever it might be. And whenever we've got an audience, we're always mentioning, when we're in a capital raise period, we were always mentioning that piece of the story. And so coming to us saying, hey, my dad is actually an investor. And so then we'd get in touch with people that way. The funny thing about this whole process has been that the moment we announced publicly that we had closed, we had investors basically just like showing up on our doorstep again. And part of what I have to do every day is filter out all of these different investors into a different folder, because we simply just can't talk to them all. And we're not trying to raise money. Now we're trying to actually work, but it is kind of fascinating that the ball gets rolling.
That's really interesting, and it makes sense. So, but 3.5 million. I mean, most beverage companies take a lot more capital than that. So, I guess, what are you thinking? Will you do a future round? Do you sort of have a certain milestone you're going to hit, number of states or whatever, and then like time to go raise 15 or 20 or something? Or how are you thinking about forward fundraising?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we worked a tranche into our current deal so that we've got milestones to hit in order to receive tranches if we want it with our current investors.
Okay.
And it's always best, I think, if you can work that into the details of your deal, because going back out onto the streets is basically means that I go shift from running this company and running production and helping with marketing, etc., to just a full-time fundraising role.
Yeah.
And as a small company, that's not a very good place to be. Once we get bigger, definitely we'll be in full-time fundraising mode, certainly. But where we're at right now, we should have more flexibility than that. So yeah, we're able to take tranches, and then once we probably triple the size of the company from where we're at today, then we'll be out on the street again looking for more capital. And I've told lots of investors that we were completely hands off on all investment conversations until 2020.
Yeah, interesting. Do you update the interested parties in some way in between, or are you just going to reach back out 2020?
So yeah, no, it's a good question too, because most companies do want you to reach out. Most companies want to see what's going on with the company on a month to month or quarter to quarter basis. So right now we don't have those conversations happening because we are squarely focusing on growth and using the money to put it to work right now. But we're building the groundwork for our quarterly mailers and board reviews and everything else we have going on, so that we could begin sending those newsletters out to investors.
Yeah, cool. Well, really good. Maybe just one more question on the tranche. I'll let you get back to building the business. I mean, you don't have to give the exact specifics, but like, what do the tranches look like? Is it number of states or or revenue, or like, what are the certain sort of milestones? I think that'd be interesting for people to sort of know how that works,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can set up a tranche any way you want, really. As you just mentioned, you could set it up to where it was the number of states or the number of products or whatever your investors would like to see. We personally set it up as a gross revenue goal. And so we've got revenue goals to hit, and then and then whatever goal we hit, we get a different valuation for the company in order to receive that tranche. So the harder we work, the harder my team works, the more beneficial it is to all of us. We get a better valuation for the company, which means we sell less of our stock. And so, and for us personally, as a business, we sort of have a different view of the industry than a lot of other players our size do, which is that typically company wants to get as much money as possible. As you mentioned, most beverages raise as much more money than we do. And ACVs is really the game that they're playing. How many doors can I open possible? The issue then becomes, can you support that growth? Can you support all those doors and stores and consumers and everything? And for us, we want to get control a smaller region and get more same store sales rather than opening as much ACV as possible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Awesome. Well, good stuff. Any other tips, thoughts, or ideas for food entrepreneurs that want to follow in your footsteps? Any lessons learned, things you do way differently next time around, or anything we haven't covered?
Good question. There's a lot, and we talk with a lot of small companies. I think it's our responsibility as we grow to continually try to help out as many smaller companies as we can. And so on almost a weekly basis, I'm meeting with companies at local coffee shops to help them with questions that they have. One of the questions that comes up often is that companies simply want to know all the answers up front to how to get from A to B. What are all the things I need to do to get there? And the hard reality of small business is that you've really got to get into it. You've really got to live it and have it affect your personal life and your body and everything because it's really about the journey of getting to be. It's not simply like some companies do, what's the idea, where's the co-packer, let's get somebody else to make it and we'll get it out to market, we'll raise it, we'll sell it, we'll all go on and be happy on a beach somewhere. For me personally, I think it's more about the journey. And as I said earlier, obstacles are opportunities in disguise. And if you're up against obstacles, you want to reach out to companies or business leaders about maybe how to get around some of those obstacles, but you're not going to get all of your questions answered or problem solved. You're always going to be in the trenches solving yet more issues that come your way. And so small businesses really, they just deal in a currency of problem solving on a daily basis. And I think that's exactly where you need to be. If you're stressed and you're biting your nails and you're on the edge of your seat in some way, for us, that's living. That's you taking a risk. That's what risk feels like. And that's where you want to be comfortable, because as a business gets bigger, it's not just your own personal risk, it's your 50 employees or more sometimes that you're putting at risk as well. And so you need to feel that, what that feels like in order to be able to communicate with your teams and the people that work with you, on the same level that they're at. So that would be one thing for sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Very good. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. You've got bottles to fill and labels to slap on and stuff like that. And it looks like a beautiful day in Boulder, so maybe you can get out and hike the Flatirons a bit. Good stuff. If people want to learn more, it's rowdymermaid.com or what is it?
Yeah, it's .com. Yep.
.com. And 17 states, I'm assuming they can figure it out on the website where it's distributed, sold? Yeah,
it needs to be updated, but yeah, most places are on the website. And if you have questions, you can send an email to info@rowdymermaid.com. And we're really good about getting back to people.
Cool. That's great. All right. Well, I'll give it a try. I probably could use some improved gut biomes or something. So,
Well, just send me an email. We'll get some out to you.
hey, cool. All right. Thanks. This is great. Well, good luck. And actually, I'll be passing through Boulder in a month, so I'll definitely check it out.
Oh yeah, stop by for sure.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Okay. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll catch you after your next round, and have a great weekend.
Hey, thank you so much. You too. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.